Hello everybody. We bought a new knitting machine, a Singer 2200. I was surprised that it looks exactly like the Superba we already had, but you may already know the different Singer models and the Superba, and there's also other brands, are the same from its layout. I think the only difference is like the add-ons you get, like which kind of additional controls you can connect to the machine. The same is true for the carriages. Front and back carriages are exactly the same, there is no difference. In this video I go about the different steps of inspection we did and the various repair and maintenance activity. This crack is probably from transport and only cosmetical, so no big deal. The crack on the front bed lever, however, that needs to be repaired. It will come loose eventually if you don't get that fixed. The gauge at the front bed is loose and glued very badly. The other half is actually missing. Actually, I have it here to glue it back. The machine is pretty dirty and dusty, also inside the grooves. The front rail is smacked quite a bit. The carriage still goes through, but it's pretty hard to push it through that smacked area. On a positive side, the front bed adjusters all work nice. And the other one? Wow, that's difference. This slide is not really sliding well, and you can see there is it goes up and down a little bit. So here that rubbery thing is not really pushed inside enough. And if you check from the side, there's a metal notch that needs to go into that hole in the plastic. And that's not really aligned. We need to move the plastic a little bit towards the right. So they probably put a new one in, but not the right way. It also looks like somebody tried to remove it because here it's cracked a little bit. So what we'll try is put some machining oil into this opening here and let it rinse down inside to the one side and to the other side, and then maybe we get it off. So after we oil that thing, it's actually quite easy to move. You can see there's a little gap where the metal notch does not perfectly fit into the plastic opening. And with a little hammering, we can hammer it in place and push it tight. Perfect. Next we clean the carriages with machine oil and a cloth and a little brush to make sure everything is dust-free and oiled nicely and runs smooth. After the cleaning, we tested the carriages on the Superba. The front bed was only knitting the needles or moving the needles in one direction. The other direction didn't move, even though we had the regular stitch selected. The problem is, if I click the regular stitch, only this part moves down nicely, this part stuck, and if I touch it a little bit it moves, and if I release it, well, meanwhile it releases better, but before it didn't move up. We oiled it already, increased it and cleaned it. Meanwhile it's better, but still not perfect, so we probably give it a little bit more oil and then it should continue to work. Another problem was the front bed release levers. They work, but the front bed lowered pretty slow and hard. With a little oil on the left and right side, everything went fine. So I now want to remove the needles. First I'm using this tool here, that little hook. And then I'm pulling out that little metal piece here. Ooh, tool not strong enough. Now it should work. So I need to pull out this metal rod. Put it in the side, do not bend it. And then we can pull out the needle, move it up a bit. Just to be sure, I close the notch, the little hook. Then I'm pulling it out here. Pull it in above the edge here. And then while I push the finger down, I'm pulling it out. So after a while you become more efficient than this. For example, move all the needles up right away, close the latches right away, and then as you pull this thing up here, you can basically do one-handed, grab it here, push down here a little bit, and voila. And you don't even need the tool. If your fingers are strong enough, you can pull it out this way. And I don't think you really need to push down because it goes out easy. If you see a needle that is bent like this one up here, you see it's bent upwards, I move it to the side. We try to replace it with the spare needles we have. So the front bed is done. Here are my decent needles, not so much cleaning. Here are the needles that need heavier cleaning. The latch doesn't really open easy enough. And there was one bent needle. Again, I put it aside to be replaced. Maybe we can bend it back, we will see.
So, and now it is on to me to clean all those 360 needles. I put the needles in a glass with the hooks upside and gave them a shower. I did not want to have the hooks in all the dirt coming out. I let the needles sit for at least 6 hours. And then I gave them a nice rub down.
For comparison, here is an unclean needle. You see all the fibers here. I'm not sure if you see the grease, but it definitely feels very sticky. Most of them, the latches move nice, some of them it's harder. And you see the results after it's being cleaned. So they're soaked in the machine oil. Wow, is there a lot of grease in that oil? Whoa, yuck.
This little sheet under.
Basically polish each needle.
I also like to go in this, just hook it in.
So these are the needles after they are cleaned and polished. They look like new. While my wife is polishing all the needles, I'm removing the lever for the front bed adjuster to glue the crack before it breaks off. This little nut can be opened with a 7mm wrench. Here you have a better look at the crack. It's pretty bad, but I think with some glue it should be fixable. So I first try to clean it with some alcohol to remove any oily stuff, let it dry out, and then use super glue. That stuff dries within 5 seconds, so that it doesn't need to be held very long. I also put some glue onto this crack to give it some additional strength. Next, I'm cleaning the needle beds. First step is to take all the loose parts off with a vacuum. And then clean everything with machine oil and a brush. So now with the right lighting, inspect the grooves and do the detail cleaning. I use pins to get into the grooves to remove all that stuff that the brush didn't get rid of. You see all these black spots, that's oily, greasy stuff that's stuck to it. And with the pin I can loosen it and pull it out or vacuum it out later. I also found those ultra thin tweezers super helpful. So meanwhile all needles are cleaned and we can start to put them back into the needle bed. To do so, make sure you open the latch before you push them in. Pushing them in is quite easy. You put it in and push, done. Then clean those 2 metal rods we removed and put them back in. As a next step, I wanted to test the machine, but the needle brake spring is broke. You can see that by having some needles that don't hold the position but slide down, as you can see here. The needle brake spring is also called the needle retention spring, and it's located within the upper rail of the 2 rails. As a first step, I'm taping the needles down so they don't fall out. Then turn around the machine on its back, and you see those holes in there and this aluminum cover, and there are the screws you need to loosen. Be aware that the screws don't come out completely. As you remove that top rail, you can see that needle brake spring. Oh man, it's dirty, it's covered from grease. But you can also see where it's broke, like here it's damaged and over there it's damaged. Those are the areas where the needles didn't hold and slipped down. To remove the spring, you slip it off that little metal disc. You'll see that little metal disc in a moment. Here is that little metal disc, pretty tiny. And here's a better look at the damaged area of the brake spring, and you can also see all the fibers that accumulated. Here are some tips how to avoid breaking your needle brake spring. This concludes part 1 of the video. Part 2 will follow once I have the new springs.